What happens when sacred promises are broken? When souls marked by darkness drift into the abyss of destruction, forever severed from the light? These sacred covenants are not merely binding for mankind, but extend to angels and powerful spirits. What is the consequence of rejecting a covenant? It is not merely destruction but oblivion, a fate more terrifying than death itself. In the dim glow of flickering flames, the night seems to devour everything, leaving wandering souls trapped in a deadly silence. Some stories are not just told in words, but etched into stone, blood, and the souls of those who bear witness. The Book of Jubilees unveils a world where covenants are not just promises but destinies engraved into the flesh and spirits of those who carry them. This story is not just about a people or a nation, it is about you. Do you have the courage to step into the darkness, to seek answers in the blood-stained and faintly illuminated pages of history? Or will you turn away, allowing the darkness to consume your soul forever? Welcome to Why the Book of Jubilees was banned Part 4. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the thrilling Part 5 coming next. Night fell over Haran, shrouding the land in silence and unease. Abram, a man whose gaze held unwavering faith and whose calloused hands bore the mark of a traveler, prepared to leave the familiar soil behind. Beside him stood Sarai, his quiet yet resolute wife, and Lot, his young nephew. They knew nothing of what awaited them at the end of their journey, save for a promise spoken by a divine voice, a voice that pierced through the veil of this world and lingered in Abram's heart. The journey was long, leading them to the land of Canaan, across the undulating hills of Assyria, and near the region of Shechem. There, a towering oak reached toward the heavens, standing as a marker of eternity. In the faint glow of the setting sun, Abram stood still, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The land stretched before him, fertile and abundant, like a verdant cloak draped over this foreign expanse. Then, from a place unseen, the voice spoke again, resonant and commanding, "To your descendants, I will give this land." In that moment, time seemed to halt. A sudden radiance poured from the heavens, bathing everything in a golden, otherworldly light. Abram fell to his knees, his trembling hands erecting an altar at the base of the great oak. Flames leaped upon the altar, their flickering dance accompanied by crackling sounds that carried praises skyward. Unseen eyes watched from the shadows, bearing witness to this mortal man's covenant with the Almighty. But Abram did not linger. He pressed to the region between Bethel and Ai, setting camp on a mountain. Here, nature seemed to reveal its generosity. Vines heavy with grapes, fig trees laden with fruit, pomegranates glowing crimson, and lofty oaks, cedars, and date palms all seemed to join in a symphony of life. Streams of clear water trickled down from the heights, filling the air with the melody of peace. Yet amidst this tranquility, there was an undercurrent of something hidden, a shadow waiting just beyond the light. Abram bowed his head, giving thanks to the one who had led him thus far, whose presence felt nearer than ever. In the first year of the 7th week, on the new moon of the first month, he built an altar atop the mountain and offered burnt sacrifices to the Lord. In the swirling smoke, Abram's prayer rang out, "You are the eternal God, the God of my faith." These words drew a line between the world's oppressive darkness and the hopeful light of belief. But the darkness did not relent. As Abram journeyed south to Hebron, a city whose ancient stone walls had stood since the dawn of history, a severe famine descended upon the land. The ground cracked, the sky grew parched, and all life seemed drained. With no other choice, Abram led his household to Egypt, the land of the sacred Nile. Massive stone statues of Egyptian gods seemed to gaze upon them, while shadows in ancient temples mocked the foreigner's steps. In the 3rd year of the week, Abram reached Tanis, a city erected 7 years after Hebron. Though bustling with activity, its vibrancy could not mask the covetous glances of those in power. Sarai's timeless beauty caught the eye of Pharaoh. Like a predator, the mighty king seized her, leaving Abram in a storm of anger and helplessness. But the power Abram worshipped did not abandon him. Mysterious plagues descended upon Egypt, pestilence, chaos, and fevered dreams tormented Pharaoh. No one could understand the cause, but fear consumed the land. In desperation, the ruler returned Sarai to Abram and expelled him from Egypt. Abram departed, not only with his wife restored to him, but also with wealth and honor. Flocks of sheep, cattle, horses, camels, and treasures of gold and silver filled their caravans. Lot, too, carried great wealth. They returned to the place of beginnings, to the altar first raised. In the fading light of dusk, Abram knelt, his hands touching the earth, and whispered his gratitude, "You, O Lord, have brought me back in peace." These words echoed in the wind, carrying a strength that transcended time and space. But was Abram's journey truly over, or had it only just begun? The darkness seemed to linger still, and mysteries remained, reminders that faith must be tested by the fires of life. The pale light of the setting sun faded beyond the horizon, leaving the sky awash in somber shades of purple. In the eerie stillness, Abram stood before the old altar, the crackling flames breaking the dense silence of the encroaching night. This was more than a ritual, a prayer sent forth into eternity. He lifted his eyes, reverent and steadfast, and declared, "The Lord, the Most High God, is my God forever and ever." His voice carried beyond the confines of this world, reaching realms invisible to all but faith. In the year 1964 AM, a painful division occurred. Lot, Abram's beloved nephew, departed to live in Sodom, a place whose infamy for sin spread far and wide. Abram did not stop him, but his heart grew heavy with sorrow. He had no child of his own, and this separation deepened a wound within his soul. The Lot had left the light of Abram's presence, seeking a land ruled by darkness and depravity. Time passed, and tragedy struck. News came to Abram like a sharp blade to his heart. Lot had been taken captive, along with his family and possessions. During a devastating raid, the mighty kings of Elam, Shinar, and Elasa had joined forces to ravage Sodom and its neighboring cities. In the valley of Siddim near the Salt Sea, a fierce battle unfolded. Rivers of blood flowed, and bodies piled like mountains. The cries of the vanquished echoed in the night, lamenting the cursed land's wickedness. Abram refused to let fear take hold. He armed 318 trained men from his household, loyal and courageous, prepared to fight under his banner. With unshakable faith in God, Abram led his men to Dan, where the enemy sought refuge. What transpired that night remains a mystery, but legend tells of a heavenly light illuminating Abram's path. The enemy's cries pierced the darkness as they fell before one whose strength came not from this world. The battle ended, and Lot was rescued along with all his possessions. The king of Sodom, humbled by the destruction he had endured, bowed before Abram and pleaded, "My lord Abram, grant us the souls you have saved, but keep the spoils for yourself." Yet Abram, with unwavering integrity, replied, "I have raised my hand to the Most High God, that I will not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, 'I have made Abram rich.'" His words, sharp as a sword, cut through greed and ambition, leaving those present in deep reverence. But the story did not end there. On his return, Abram received a great promise from God. a promise that pierced the veil of darkness like a beacon of light. Lift your eyes now and look from where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever, and I will make your descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth. These words, thunderous and eternal, etched themselves into Abram's heart. He was no longer alone. Though childless at that moment, his descendants would number like the stars of the night sky. From that day, Abram established an everlasting covenant. He vowed that all the first fruits of his harvest, grain, wine, oil, livestock, and sheep would be offered to the Lord, a tenth, without fail, as a testament of gratitude and reverence. This was not merely a law but an eternal commitment, ensuring his descendants would remember the one who guided them through every trial. As Abram knelt beside the altar, the flames blazed brightly against the surrounding darkness. He felt the presence of an infinite power. Though shadows surrounded him, the light of the Lord continued to shine, a reminder that faith could never be extinguished. His journey was not only a tale of victories, but a testament to the enduring power of faith in the face of life's greatest trials. The promises engraved upon his soul transcended time and space, becoming a guiding light for future generations. A crescent moon hung low in the night sky, casting a faint, dreamlike glow over the earth as though unveiling a realm where reality and dreams intertwined. On such a night, in the 4th year of this week, Abram lay deep in slumber. Suddenly, a voice called out, not one formed by human lips, but one emanating from the depths of his soul, piercing through the mists of consciousness. Do not fear, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. These words startled Abram awake, not with panic, but with the awe of an undeniable presence. Heavy with unspoken sorrow, he lifted his gaze, his eyes reflecting both steadfast faith and an unvoiced ache. He spoke, "O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Damasek Eliezer, the son of my servant. I have no offspring of my own." Silence enveloped him as if the entire universe awaited a response. Then, breaking through the darkness, the voice returned, resonant and sovereign. "This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir." The words were not merely a promise. They were a beam of light piercing the dense shadows in Abram's heart, illuminating a future he had scarcely dared to imagine. The voice continued, "Look toward the heavens and count the stars if you can number them." Abram stepped outside his tent and gazed upward. The night sky unfolded before him, infinite and alive with stars, tiny yet vibrant beacons of light. "So shall your descendants be." The voice declared a divine affirmation that carved itself into the expanse of the heavens. Abram said nothing more. He bowed his head, not in doubt, but in the fullness of faith, a faith counted as righteousness. "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land of Canaan to possess forever. I will be your God and the God of your descendants after you," the voice proclaimed, burning with an eternal flame. Yet Abram, in his human frailty, could not help but question, "O Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" This time, the answer came not through words but through a command. "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Though the request was strange, Abram did not waver. He understood that these acts carried a meaning far beyond his comprehension, forming part of a sacred covenant in which he was merely the obedient servant. In the middle of the month, beneath the oaks of Mamre near Hebron, Abram obeyed. He built an altar, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. One by one, the animals were presented, their blood seeping into the altar. filling the air with the scent of sacrifice and purification. He divided the animals in two, placing the halves opposite each other, but left the birds intact. The scene held a haunting beauty, terrifying and sacred, like an ancient ritual from the dawn of creation. As darkness settled over the land, birds of prey descended from the sky, drawn to the fresh flesh. But Abram, his eyes aflame with determination and his hands resolute, drove them away, guarding the sanctity of the covenant. He allowed nothing to defile the ritual, as though he instinctively knew that every detail carried profound significance, even if he could not yet grasp its full meaning. The atmosphere thickened as though space and time had come to a standstill. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if bearing witness to and recording Abram's every action. Within him, a small flame burned, not the flame of the altar, but the fire of faith, of an unshakable commitment. In that sacred moment, Abram's actions and beliefs intertwined with the eternal. The night bore witness to the covenant, sealed not merely in blood but in faith and promise. The stars above, too numerous to count, now stood as both a testament and a guide for future generations. Night fell, and darkness spread like a thick veil across the heavens. As the last light of the setting sun vanished, Abram entered a trance, and the world around him transformed. The wind stilled, leaving only the sound of his heartbeat, a solemn reminder of life. Then, a terror profound and mysterious descended upon him. It came not from without, but from the depths of the darkness itself. This was no ordinary fear. It was the dread of a soul standing before a power beyond comprehension. In the midst of his trance, a voice resounded, majestic and thunderous, like a storm breaking through a calm sky. Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I will judge the nation that enslaves them, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. These words were not mere prophecy. They were an eternal decree, etched into the destiny of a people yet unborn. Still in his vision, Abram glimpsed the future, shadows of chains and suffering, yet also of light, deliverance, and abundance. You will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age, the voice continued, like a gentle breeze amid the storm of revelation. But the certainty was clear, the future awaited, and the journey was far from over. When Abram opened his eyes, the faint light of the stars had given way to the depth of night. Before him, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch passed between the divided pieces of the offering he had prepared. It was the sign of a covenant, not merely a promise, but a divine commitment between God and Abram. To your descendants, I will give this land, the voice declared, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenite, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaim, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Abram, with unwavering faith, offered sacrifices of meat, birds, fruits, and libations. Flames consumed the offerings, not leaving a sense of loss but lifting reverence, trust, and thanksgiving. This was no mere ritual. It was the emblem of a sacred bond between man and Creator, transcending space and time. Next day, Abram returned home with a heart full of joy. He recounted everything to Sarai, his beloved wife, confident in the promise of a child from the Lord. But Sarai, a woman who had endured years of barrenness, could not completely silence the doubts in her heart. With a troubled gaze, she told Abram, "Go to Hagar, my Egyptian servant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram listened to his wife. He looked into her eyes, where deep sorrow and resolve lay intertwined, and replied, "Do as you wish." Sarai, firm in her quiet determination, brought Hagar to Abram. Hagar conceived and bore within her the lineage of the one God chose. A child was born, a boy named Ishmael. It was the 5th year of that week, 1965 AM, and Abram was 86 years old. But Ishmael was no ordinary child. He carried the weight of expectations, promises, and conflicts predetermined by destiny. Hagar, once a servant, now stood as the mother of Abram's son, a role fraught with complexity amid Sarai's lingering jealousy and unfulfilled desires. What transpired was not merely the continuation of a story, but the beginning of covenants, conflicts, and a future forged in light and shadow, a legacy that would echo throughout history, forever inscribed in its annals. The clear skies of the 3rd month stretched endlessly like a boundless tapestry, yet the air over the land where Abram dwelled was charged with a sacred and mysterious presence. The 5th year of the 4th week in the Jubilee year, 1979 AM, had arrived, and Abram prepared to celebrate the first fruits of the wheat harvest. This was not merely a ritual, but a profound connection between man and the divine, between earth and heaven. With strong hands and a heart full of faith, Abram erected an altar to offer the first fruits to the Lord. Upon the altar, a young heifer, a male goat, and a lamb were presented as burnt offerings, alongside incense and the first fruits of the harvest. Abram completed the ceremony in absolute reverence. The smoke from the altar rose, carried by the wind, as if bearing his prayers to the highest realms. This smoke was more than an offering. It was a thread binding man to the Almighty. Then, in the solemn stillness, the Lord appeared before Abram. A blinding light engulfed the space, not from the sun, but from the indescribable presence of divine power. A voice resounded, powerful and majestic, yet full of grace. "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between you and me, and I will multiply you exceedingly." Abram, overcome with awe, fell face down to the ground, unable to lift his gaze. But the voice continued, thundering like the roll of distant storms, shaking him to his core. "Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations." These words, a revelation, unveiled a destiny greater than Abraham could have imagined. "I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you," the Lord proclaimed, painting a glorious vision of the future. The descendants of Abraham would not simply be a lineage, but would become nations, kings, and chosen people among all peoples. This was not merely a promise. It was a covenant, an eternal bond between the Almighty and Abraham and his descendants. "I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your descendants after you throughout their generations, as an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. And I will give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you dwell, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." The radiant light continued to envelop the space, symbolizing the divine promise. But the Lord did not leave only words. He gave a sign, an undeniable mark of this covenant. "Keep my covenant," the Lord commanded, "you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you." These words, though sacred, carried an unsettling weight. Circumcision, a simple act, would become an indelible mark of commitment. Blood, as a testament to loyalty and devotion, would seal the covenant, not only on their bodies, but within their spirits. This sign would remain forever etched in the identity of Abraham's descendants. Abraham, with reverence, accepted the covenant. He was not only a recipient of the promise, but its executor, bearing the responsibility for himself and a nation yet to come. The words of the Lord, the rituals he performed, all fused into an eternal covenant, inscribed into history as the foundation of a chosen people who would bear witness to the power and faithfulness of the Almighty. As night fell, the light of the Lord's presence remained, glowing like an eternal flame. In the darkness, Abraham felt more clearly than ever that his life was not merely the tale of one man, but the cornerstone of a future where light and shadow would intertwine, crafting new and wondrous chapters in the flow of history. The stillness of night enveloped the land, with only the stars gleaming in the heavens, silent witnesses to a covenant about to be etched into the annals of history. Amid this tranquility, a powerful and majestic voice shattered the dense silence. On the 8th day, every male among you, throughout your generations, whether born in your house or purchased with money from a foreigner, must be circumcised. My covenant will be established in your flesh as an everlasting ordinance. The light of these words pierced through the fog of doubt and the limits of human reason. Circumcision, simple yet profound, became a sacred sign engraved upon the flesh of every male as a testimony to the eternal bond between humanity and the Almighty. Any male who is not circumcised will be cut off from his people, for he has broken my covenant. But the covenant did not stop there. Another promise, deeper and more significant, was given. The Lord turned his gaze toward Sarai, Abraham's faithful wife who had endured countless trials alongside him, and declared, "Her name will no longer be Sarai but Sarah. I will bless her, and she will bear you a son. She will become a mother of nations, and kings of peoples will come from her." These words, radiant and life-changing, also carried an air of astonishment. Abraham, now 100 years old, could not help but wonder, can a man of 100 have a son? And can Sarah, at 90 years old, bear a child? Though surprise filled his heart, his faith remained unshaken. He fell face down, overwhelmed by both joy and humility before a promise that transcended human understanding. Even so, in a fleeting moment of thought, Abraham did not forget Ishmael, his firstborn son, who had been by his side through the years. "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing," he said, hoping for God's favor upon the boy. The Lord, full of grace, responded, "Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him, an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will bless him, make him fruitful, and greatly increase his numbers. He will father 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year." These words were not merely promises but divine directives, illuminating the path ahead for Abraham and his descendants. As the final words of the Lord echoed, he ascended, leaving Abraham in sacred silence. The radiant light faded, and the voice ceased, but Abraham's heart now burned with faith and hope. Without hesitation, Abraham set out to fulfill the command he had been given. He summoned every male in his household, from Ishmael, his son, to those born in his home and even those purchased with silver. Not a single one was excluded. In the bright light of day, the rite of circumcision was carried out. Blood was shed, but it was not the blood of pain. It was the blood of dedication, of an unbreakable covenant. With each action, Abraham engraved a moment into history that would transcend time and space, becoming the foundation of a chosen people. The light of the ritual, though solemn and intense, bore an undeniable beauty, the beauty of unwavering faith and absolute loyalty. Through this act, Abraham not only affirmed his place in the covenant with God, but also imprinted upon every male in his household a profound sense of the sacred bond that would forever shape their destiny. Night fell once more, but within Abraham, the light of God's words burned brightly, never to be extinguished. And on that land, a chosen people began their journey, guided by a covenant where shadow and light intertwined. A timeless reminder that greatness is forged through trials and unwavering faith. In the dim light of the 8th day, where sacred covenant and blood intertwined, Abraham stood among the men of his household. The air was heavy with solemnity, as though all creation held its breath, bearing witness to a moment destined to be etched into history. On that day, Abraham himself, his son Ishmael, and all the men of his household, including those purchased with money from foreign lands, underwent circumcision. The blood fell to the earth, not merely as a sign of sacrifice, but as an indelible testament to obedience to the everlasting covenant with God. The authoritative voice of the Lord thundered as if carving commands into stone. Circumcision must not be delayed. The 8th day is an eternal ordinance, a decree inscribed upon the heavenly tablets. The gravity of these words cut through any indifference like a sharp blade. Those who refused to be circumcised on the 8th day would be cut off from the covenant. No longer part of God's people, their souls, the Lord declared, would be erased from life, destined to become children of destruction, uprooted like unwanted weeds from the soil. This command was not just for humanity. From the world's creation, even the angels in God's presence and those sanctified by Him had been consecrated under this decree. Before them, the Lord had chosen Israel, sanctifying them as His people, set apart under His protection and guidance. Israel will belong to no power but me, His voice declared, and I will reclaim them from the hand of every power so that they will be mine, and I will be theirs, now and forever. These words blazed like a sacred fire, illuminating the divine choice of Israel among all nations. Though all nations belonged to Him, Israel alone would be held by God's hand, entrusted to no other power, human or angelic. It was a bond both holy and unbreakable, a covenant between the Almighty and a chosen people. Yet, amidst the light of this covenant, a dark prophecy loomed like a shadow. I tell you in advance. His voice softened to a warning. The children of Israel will not uphold this command. They will neglect to circumcise their sons as they were instructed. They will forsake circumcision, and their sons will grow up without the mark of the covenant. In a vision blurred by prophecy, God foresaw Israel's disobedience, turning away from the covenant, dismissing its commands, and becoming profane. My wrath will fall upon them, He declared, for they have abandoned me, provoked me, and treated my covenant as dust. There will be no forgiveness or pardon for this eternal sin. They will be cast out, uprooted from the land I have given them. These prophetic words echoed like a curse across time, conjuring images of exile, rebellion, and defeat, events seemingly inscribed on the unalterable pages of destiny. Yet even this dire warning lay a reminder: the covenant with God should not be taken lightly. It is a sacred promise and a profound responsibility, demanding unwavering faithfulness. As the ritual of the 8th day concluded, blood mingled with the soil, and the mark of the covenant was inscribed upon the flesh of every man in Abraham's household. Abraham lifted his eyes to the heavens. The stars above shimmered as a reminder of the promise God had made to him, a promise of descendants as countless as the sands of the sea, a chosen people destined to endure. Yet, within Abraham's gaze lingered a quiet worry. Would his descendants keep the covenant, or would they fall into the spiral of destruction foretold in the prophecy? Beneath the vast expanse of the heavens, where light and shadow endlessly intertwined, The covenant between God and Abraham was sealed, not only in blood but in the very soul of Israel. A sacred yet challenging covenant. It burned like an unquenchable flame, lighting the way for a chosen people through the currents of history. In the solemn darkness of history, the Book of Jubilees reveals a profound truth. Covenants are not merely promises but bonds that link the human soul to the divine. These covenants, inscribed in stone, sealed in blood, and marked upon the flesh, are not meant for the indifferent or the hesitant. They demand absolute obedience, unwavering loyalty, and a steadfast will to endure the harshest trials. But darkness always lurks, preying on weak souls. Disobedience is not merely an action. It is the mark of a soul adrift, straying from the light. Those who break the covenant not only sever their connection to the Creator, but also plunge themselves onto a path of destruction where forgiveness is no longer found. The lesson lies in the choice. Do we have the strength to bear the sacred responsibility of the covenant? Or will we let it become a burden that crushes our souls? The light is always present, but it shines only for those who dare to face the darkness, overcome it, and engrave obedience upon their hearts. Abram's journey is far from over. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to follow the next chapters of this incredible journey. Please subscribe to our channel to enjoy more captivating Bible stories from us.